Hey everybody, my name is Zuri. I'm a technical artist in the AAA games industry. I love all things free and open source software. I love teaching Blender. I love teaching game development and all the things that surround that. I've taught at the college level, high school level, and honestly even middle school, which is kind of chaos in its own right. And I really enjoy empowering other people to get to the point where they can take their dream projects and turn them into something real, which is super exciting. A lot of the places where I have taught teach proprietary software, whether that's because they're trying to prepare you for the games industry or because they're a proprietary school that makes a fortune off teaching you very expensive software. And I don't come from a particularly lucrative background, so whenever I could, making use of free tools was obviously going to get me a lot further than a tool that costs me as much as Maya, which is like $200 a month per seat, these are the types of tools that the games industry tends to use. And even though I've been very successful in my career and have access to these types of tools, it bothers me a lot that when I was teaching these kinds of courses, I'd often see people that were in the same spot that I was at their age. And I'd be done teaching this class for DigiPen or others like that. And they'd be like, oh boy, I can't wait to go home and use these tools. I'm like, haha, you can't because it's $200 a month and you and your parents can't afford it. And I got really tired of saying no to that kind of thing. I've been burned by Autodesk, Unity, Adobe, all these big companies that keep saying, no, you're not good enough. No, your little community project isn't interesting to us because we are only interested in commercial projects. No, of course you can afford this because your only possible use case must be a commercial, big, expensive project. And that completely squeezes out so many people that might otherwise be doing a project that's maybe just a fun, free community project. One time I participated in World Blender Meetup Day, and there were people from, I want to say Nigeria, some country in Africa, and they were all excited about the VFX that they were getting to do for a film that they were working on. And it's not a professional piece, but with the professional software needed to produce something like that, they would have been squeezed out of that pricing zone and just been told, no, you can't make that. So I don't tend to teach at places that do that anymore. And I found other ways of scratching that itch for educating people. And where I've kind of found a home now is the Seattle Blender User Group. I'm from the Seattle area. The Seattle Blender User Group meets once a month in person, and we all just kind of hang out, talk about Blender things. And ever since COVID, every Thursday, we get together in the evenings and we talk about all things Blender. It's pretty crazy because this has been going on for since COVID, quite some time. That's a lot of Thursdays, that's a lot of hours, that's a lot of projects. And there's a lot of members that show up all the time, and over time, their skills improve. You would hope so if they've been coming for like 5+ years at this point. But that's really exciting because I kind of get to see their journey, and I get to see them scale up in the kind of quality and level and tier of what their questions are at. We get people from all different skill levels at Seattle Blender User Group. So we have some people that are right at the very beginning of their journey. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know how to extrude a face. How do I do that? Other people that have gotten more intermediate stuff, and their questions that they have are things like, I want to animate a character, I want to rig a character, I want to do these kinds of things. And this is great. We can usually get through these types of topics fairly well within those couple of hours in the Thursday evenings, even if it takes a couple of Thursdays. But there comes a time when the members of the group that have been there for years, they're at a point in their journey where I can't really teach them things out of context. So inevitably, everybody's doing this kind of stuff because eventually they probably want to do some of their own fairly large projects, whether that's a movie or a game or some other large production. And then those questions come. How do I make a game? And I'm a professional in the games industry. You'd think I could answer this, but I can't really answer it without all the context that surrounds making a game. You kind of have to get your hands on it. And not everybody has access to the same things that I did, getting to go to college where we had some of these resources, and especially getting to work in the games industry, I'm exposed to a lot of these professional workflows that allow us to be efficient, not lose our data, work collaboratively. And this posed a pretty interesting problem. How do I get these people to a point where they can actually get to learn how to be efficient in producing these works using the professional workflows that I can't live without from what I've been exposed to in the AAA games industry, but also provide it to them in a context that actually works for them. So that is what posed the idea to produce bugjam. So the Seattle Blender user group, BUG, Blender user group, the Vancouver Blender user group, which is close friends of ours, also a BUG, and then the Godot Seattle group. Godot is a game engine that we have a lot of overlap in our Blender community, and the Godot community have a lot of overlap there. And a lot of us had been getting together to do little game jams together where we make a game in a short time. That was typically done for people that already kind of knew how to make a game. And so we posed this idea, what if we get all of our groups together and we make a little game jam of our own that's focused on some of these more professional workflows that everybody kind of learns what it really takes to produce a game. So Blender user group jamming together, bugjam. So this talk has several parts to it. This is first and foremost about the free and open source software stack, which was in the title of the talk. I couldn't really find a way to present this in a way that was going to explicitly appeal to one group or another, so I'm kind of splitting the talk into a couple of parts. This first part, we're going to start with some of the kind of fun parts here, which is what is bugjam, what did we make, and then if you're like, cool, I saw a neat community project, I want to bounce, I won't be offended if you go visit one of the other talks or just want to dip out. But after that, we're going to talk about what tools did we use and how can you do the same, because part of this process is that I was hoping to be able to share and give back to the community by enabling not just the group that participated in bugjam, but anybody that's here at this talk or otherwise wants to learn about what we did to succeed. So our first bit here, what is bugjam? It's I've mostly explained it already. We wanted to do a game jam. Now, a lot of game jams, if you haven't heard of these, they tend to be about a week long of a handful of people that are decently to mid-tier to advanced skill level in game development, all getting together and just rushing through to the end to make a game in a very short window. And this is fine, but while trying to teach at the same time, a week is really not enough, especially because that a lot of these people have full-time jobs and whatnot. So we decided that this should be about a month. It ended up being 2 months by the time we were done, but within that window, rather than focusing on just ramming it through and getting so much done, this was more about slow it down and focus on these professional workflows. So we'll talk more about what those particular things are. Primarily, though, we wanted to learn version control software, documentation, and task management software. Again, as a professional in the AAA games industry, there pretty much are no studios out there that aren't utilizing some form of these types of tools, and that's what I wanted to share with this group. We also wanted to use as many free and open source tools as possible. Obviously, I'm big on Blender, and because of all those times that I've struggled with, rug pulls, licensing changes, price hikes, things like that, I really hate the idea of teaching somebody all this stuff only to have the company that makes that software decide to change it out from under everybody. So we wanted to focus on, as much as possible, a free and open source stack, both on the artistic tools that we're using to author everything and the entire back end of the server where we're going to be hosting these tools, which we'll get to momentarily. We also did not want to use any asset flipping or AI generated content. This was about learning the actual workflows. So, a lot of the stuff, you can show a finished piece in your portfolio, but it's everything that led up to that would make you a hireable, employable person in the games industry. Is like, you're going to have to do these real workflows. So that's the kind of stuff we wanted to focus on here. And we also wanted to share and the ability to replicate all of these ideas with everybody here at BCON or otherwise. And so we decided to open source our project as well as the documentation around it and the tutorials that we made and everything around it so that as many people as possible can benefit from what we've put together. So that's the idea behind bugjam. After we pitched it to those groups, 25 people signed up, which is pretty cool. It's about double what I originally thought, which was at the same time a little bit overwhelming and nerve-wracking, but also really cool. And I think what was really cool about it is that we had a pretty even split of people that were kind of medium experience, as well as people on the other end of the spectrum of people that had literally never done anything like this before, as well as a handful of professionals who could take on a bit more of a mentorship role, which was excellent for a learning environment, as well as actually getting it done. So everybody that participated in the jam got a chance to pitch a theme. We all put the themes on a wheel and we spun the wheel, and we landed on this theme, Pounce, which was a fun, ambiguous kind of thing that left a lot of open room for what the game pitch could be. And I think that this, if you're going to replicate this and try to run a community project like this is kind of a fun carrot on a stick right off the bat of like getting people to participate because they get to be part of the initial pitching process. And I think that I think people felt that and were excited to partake because of that. And then we all eventually pitched our ideas, and we finally landed on this one. In this game, the player takes on the role of a mischievous Tanuki, breaking into a futuristic museum to steal a priceless diamond. You'd think that you need a lot more description on this to make a game out of, but it turns out scope creep is a real thing in game development, and starting as small as possible, it will naturally expand to fill the void of how much room you've got left, and it's actually more work to kind of make sure that you pare things down. So as simple as a concept as that sounds, we got some fun original concept art for what the character might look like there. And skipping way ahead there, we decided to make a game. So I'm going to show you a 5-minute video of what we made, partially because I'm just super proud of what this group put together, and to give you context of kind of like what level of content this software stack is able to handle and what we authored, because it's going to give you context and meaning of what you can pull off with what everything else I'm going to show you. But also I just want to try to point out and appreciate that everything that you see here is original content. So everything from menus and UI interactions, sound effects, the ability to like pick up items, swap them, lighting and models, like animations, all of this was done 2 months ago as of yesterday. None of this was even conceived of, and it was all created fresh for this project. And it's just like, there's something really special about that, and I wanted to share what we got here. So let's check out the game. Thank you. I'm just super proud of what these groups were able to put together, about 25 of us. And I played more of an administrative role rather than an individual contributor on a lot of these things. Turns out that managing a project of 25 people is a very busy task all on its own. But yeah, it's just, and I could just, again, remember about half of the people on here had never done anything like this before. So to go from 0 to like finished game, and you guys can go and play this on itch.io today, which is just like super cool. There'll be a link at the end of the talk. I'm just so proud of what we put together. So. And again, if you were here just to see kind of a fun little community project and like that was the interesting part for you, again, there's your cue to leave and you can go check that out. The rest of it gets very technical about how we set this up so that we can collaborate as a team and manage the project. So that's going to be more on like the how do you replicate this yourself if you're interested in doing something similar. Takeaways from this project, things that worked really well for us. So we delegated leadership roles. As I said, being kind of the project manager for it took kind of a toll in its own right. So that was not an area where if I had to be every leadership role all at the same time, I don't know that the project would have gotten done. We delegated a pipeline lead, a art director, and programming lead that all kind of took the reins and was able to make sure that each of those respective parts of the game was moving forward, which couldn't have been better. Highly recommend delegating some of those roles. Watch out for scope creep. We met every week while we were producing this and making sure that everything was on track. And inevitably, people were like, "Ooh, but what if we added this feature?" Like, no, no, we need to make the game. And so sometimes you're way ahead of schedule, and you can scope up, but you should always keep expectations reasonable. Don't put the word bug in the name of your project. It turned out that every time a developer got an email about a project update, they thought they were in trouble for a bug that was introduced to the game. So maybe don't name your project that. And then setting up a mail server turned out to be something that we didn't do at the beginning of the project, and everybody's not getting notifications for all the updates to the game. So that is definitely something we would do from the start next time. Setting up single sign-on so that people didn't have to manage so many accounts would have been nice as well. Setting up a backup solution. So this was such a new setup here. We had some built-in redundancy in our data that this was not a worry on day one. But as this lives longer, I highly encourage everybody to look into backup solutions. Nobody wants to lose data. And then we set up a lot of pipelines for the game to help assets get from Blender into the game engine, but we were building them during that month of the jam, and in retrospect, we really should have done that before the jam. So these are some takeaways, things we learned, lessons learned, but a lot of that is kind of decently documented now, and if we do another one, a lot of that will be this. So as far as software that we use, a lot of this is fairly obvious coming from a group like this. We all know Blender. And we were trying to use as many free and open source tools as possible. For the game engine, Godot ended up being a pretty obvious choice. It's an MIT licensed game engine. It feels a lot like Unity if you're used to Unity. And honestly, it's just been a real pleasure to really give it a shot. It's getting awesome new features all the time. It's got nicer baked lighting and real-time 3D effects. And honestly, I was very impressed and pleased with the general workflow of it. And I definitely will choose it again for my next game project. Across the board, we actually have a full list of software that we used. We have basically pre-approved software that was compatible with our goals here. Anything that was like a paid-for subscription was outright banned, and anything that was not going to work cross-platform was not allowed either, because we also encouraged a lot of people to actually use Linux as their operating system for this as well. It wasn't a hard requirement. We had some people on macOS, some people on Windows, but I was on Linux, and it worked out great. But that's the type of software that you think of the day-to-day authoring of content. That is not actually enough to produce a collaborative environment, because at some point you've got to get everybody's stuff tied together. And those are the types of workflows and tools that I'm exposed to in the AAA games industry. And it was a major part of the environment that I wanted to provide for people in learning these things. So beyond these tools that initially come to mind, there are 3 core pieces of software that I consider to be pivotal in a successful project like this. The 3 categories are going to be version control software, documentation, and task management. The first one is easily the most important. I could forgive you for skipping those 2, but I don't think any successful projects come out of avoiding this first one. if you have no context for what this means, I think we're all guilty of working on a project and you improve your version of your Blender file or your text document over time, and you're a little unsure. You don't want to save over the first version because what if you accidentally lose important changes? So you call it work in progress 1, work in progress 2, work in progress 3, and then this one's the final, so you call it final, but then you do an update anyway, so now it's final 2, and then it's final 2, and then you start just typing random letters on it and all that kind of stuff. And then you look back at it later, like, which one's the real one? And you're like, oh, actually, the final 3 was not the real one. So it becomes unsustainable. This is unsustainable for one person. This is absolutely impossible for managing it across a team with multiple people, especially because this comes with the very next problem of how do I even get this data over to my teammates where they can utilize it? And a lot of people will just use like Dropbox or Google Docs or something like that and try to upload it, and then, okay, now you go download it, and then they do, and then they're all already out of sync because that guy did a change. And again, unsustainable with even 2 people, impossible with like 25 people. You need some kind of system, and what version control does is it allows you to save your content with no work in progress version of anything, just the final name of each file in the correct place, and it checks it into the version control system, and then that can be pushed up to a server that holds onto that latest version. Everybody else can pull, and everybody stays in sync, and it doesn't take hours, it doesn't take minutes. You're in sync in seconds. And that, when you're working this fast, that's necessary is an understatement for this. Like, working that fast, it's the only way to successfully collaborate. So some kind of version control. The games industry primarily uses one called Perforce. This is problematic because of similar reasons to like Adobe and Autodesk's pricing models, and we'll get back to that in just a moment. Documentation is another one that I think is really important. A little anecdote here. I went to college for game design. I got my bachelor's degree in it, and we were working on a little group project. Our lead designer, we were playing these like gumball characters, and our lead designer at an early design meeting pitched the idea of, we need this gumball machine in the game. And we're like, okay, cool, we'll make that. And then he got sick, and he couldn't tell us further what his intentions were for what the gumball machine does in the game. What mechanics does this play out? How important is it? And he wasn't going to be able to come back and join us and clarify his ideas, and we did not have any documentation for what this was supposed to be. And that's kind of a problem when we have a deadline coming up and we need to finish this thing and we don't even know where to start. So we all got together to talk about what we were making for the gumball machine, and it was incredible. Not a single person in the room had the same understanding of what they thought we were making. Every single one of them, we went around the room and we got everything from, oh, it's nothing, it's just a background prop and it just looks nice in the background, it doesn't matter that much, to it's the most pivotal thing of the game. The gameplay starts with it, the player turns the crank, and then like your scoring system works based off of it. And like, we can't be building the same project together if we don't even know these basics. And so documentation is a way to combat that. Even nobody likes writing it, but everybody misses it when it's not there. So if you get some kind of minimal blurb about what your thoughts are, or even if you just record a meeting and have something to look back on, documentation that's centralized where everybody can go look up these documents is crucial. And then task management. This one is this can be done in multiple ways. You can be very strict about it. I prefer a little bit more loose. Task management, at the very minimum, you have a list of things that need to be done, and I prefer actually assigning them to specific people, because if you don't do that as a minimum, 2 pretty nasty things can go wrong. On our month-long project, you 3 weeks in and realize you don't even have a minimal playable version of your game because nobody was assigned to and nobody thought they were supposed to be working on the core gameplay systems of the game yet. It's like, well, of course I didn't start it. Nobody assigned it to me. And that's fair, right? But a task management system can help you do that. But it also solves the inverse problem, which is arguably even worse, which is that 2 developers got excited about a feature at the same time. They both start on it without realizing that they're both working on the same feature. Now we've got duplicate work. You can only keep one of them. That's hurt feelings, that's wasted time, that's discouragement, and task management can help solve that. So you can scale these up. Some people like to measure their actual time commitment on these as well. In the professional game industry, producers love this because if they say, oh, look, it took the artists 2 hours to make that asset, they know, oh, we need 10 more assets. This is how much time it's going to take. I hate that. I'm really bad at it. Every producer in the room is probably cringing hearing me say this, but I hate logging my hours. But the neat thing about these types of tools is that they kind of scale up to where you're at and how you want to use them. And that's part of why we are choosing the particular tools that we are using here. Now, in the AAA games industry, we tend to use Perforce and Confluence and Jira. These tools are pretty ubiquitous. They're out there, but they all come with a pretty nasty cost. These are all software as a service products. You don't buy them once and then have them, and forget about it. They will pretend they are free. If you search for free task management software, Atlassian, who makes Jira and Confluence, has paid for ads on Google to tell you that they are free, but they are not. Especially, they usually cap out at like 5 users on a project, but bugjam had 25 users. And so if we extrapolate the pricing for each of these things that they've publicly listed on their, as soon as you're outside of their free tier, this is what it would have cost us every month of bugjam. $1,300 a month to run this silly little community project. Not a single person on this team is making money. We're not out to make money. We're just here to make a fun little project. And this 1 month project accidentally took us 2 months to actually finish and turn it into something where we could upload it to itch.io where people could play it, which meant this actually would have cost us $2,600 to produce this little project, and we're not making any money on it. Who's going to foot that bill? It probably would have been me. I don't want to do that. Even worse is that this never ends. If you're hosting your data on Perforce's servers, that cost, it doesn't stop when the game jam ends. You're going to be paying them to be hosting your data for a very long time. So we decided to nip this in the bud. Back in the idea of using the free and open source tools for this, there must be a way to get away from this. It turns out that there is. The trouble with the looking this up to find out what are the alternatives is that these things do have ongoing costs. They've got to store your data, you've got to upload files, you've got to download files. And if they're offering that for free, usually there's some kind of catch, usually that you only have up to 5 users, something like that. But a lot of free and open source software does exist, they just won't provide the hardware for you. They won't provide the storage, they won't provide the data ingress and egress for you. You have to host it yourself. So as soon as you accept that, a whole new world opens up of the ability to actually take back control of your own data with these types of projects. You can host them on your own server, and you can get your monthly costs down considerably. So we used alternatives to the 3 tools I mentioned before. For our version control system, we decided to use Git. A lot of people confuse Git and GitHub. GitHub is not the same product. It is a proprietary piece of software owned by Microsoft, and they also have one of those fake free tiers where eventually you get beyond that limit of being able to get away with it for free. And unfortunately, game development work is exactly the situation where you don't qualify for the free tier anymore. We need to upload high resolution textures, and as soon as you go beyond 100 megabytes on a single file and try to upload it to GitHub, they say, oh, you can't upload that. You need to turn on large file storage. You're like, okay, so you turn on large file storage, like, oh, you can't do that. You need to, we're going to charge you for that. Like, okay, how much is it? And it's like $60 a month per user for the rest of your life, because now they're storing your data, and we're right back to the Perforce problem of that never-ending price tag. So we don't have to give up on Git, because Git isn't the problem. It's GitHub that's got that pricing model. There are alternatives to GitHub, and actually, if you go to the Blender Foundation and look at the source code for Blender at projects.blender.org, you'll notice that that website looks quite a bit like GitHub, but it's actually an alternative called Git, which is a free and open source alternative that you can self-host. And that's exactly what the Blender Foundation does. And that is available to you and me and everyone. There's a spin-off of Git that's a little bit more security focused and a little bit more hardened and simple, which is called Forgejo. And so that's what we chose for this project. So for our version control system, we went with Forgejo, Git, and the large file storage version of Git called LFS. For documentation, we went with a cool one called BookStack. This one's pretty cool because you can get away with using Google Docs, but Google Docs doesn't do a great job of interlinking pages together. And so we went with BookStack because it gives you this nice like chapter outline and the pages kind of tied together.
Does it support Markdown?
There is a version that you can enable for Markdown. By default, they have their own WYSIWYG editor, and definitely some people prefer Markdown. If you're super invested in the Markdown workflow, some people skip this step, and Forgejo actually has a wiki built into it that's all Markdown based. Oh, okay. So you could just go full Forgejo if that's your jam. We chose BookStack because we were pretty picture heavy and we wanted to be very artist friendly, and this just worked pretty well for that. Although we actually had a lot of the programmers on the team. Well, we could have just and then Vikunja, oddly enough, that's the same answer, is that this one actually has some task management built into it as well. So if you wanted a very minimal version, you could have gone full in on this. But Vikunja is, again, it's got some built-in time tracking stuff, and we'll take a look at some of those things. And then in the very last bit of this talk, we'll talk about how we actually went about hosting these, because you can't just go online and say, I'm going to go to forgejo.com and use their thing. You have to download it and install it as a piece of software on your own server, and we deployed it using a operating system called TrueNAS, and it's a containerized application system called Docker. Public access to these tools using a system called Pangolin. We'll get back to those. Sure. This is an open project, as we said in the earlier parts there. Part of the goal was to make sure that other people could learn from this. So right now, if you wanted to, it'd be a little rude because we're in the middle of the talk, but if you wanted to, you could go to bugjam.dev, which is the website in our central, he's doing it, which is our homepage for the game development. And we just set up these little links to each of these services. These are private instances of these services, so it's just our data. And if you go to these links, you're actually tapping into the home server that's literally sitting in my closet at home right now, which is pretty cool. You won't be able to get into that one because only people with accounts can see the tasks on Vikunja, but the other two should be fully browsable as a guest. And I highly encourage you, primarily after the talk, to go browse and see what we put together there. I talked a lot already about what this one's all about. This is what Forgejo looks like. You get this cool landing page. If you like, you can make a little banner for your game so you know what that's about. This was really fun because it was put together before we defined the art. So we just drew a little banner and put it on it. It was pretty fun. And then the problem with Git is that it's a command line tool, so that you don't have a lot of buttons to utilize it. You're supposed to type in the terminal to use it. And so a lot of people like to pair it up with a graphical user interface. Pushing heavily into our free and open source tools, we decided to go for one called SourceGit. Terrible name, very confusing, but excellent product. And it is actually also a free and open source tool. It's kind of an up-and-comer. It's getting new features all the time, but we went full in on it, and it held its own for sure. It was a great experience. Highly recommend. So this was for our version control system. All of this is free. That one you got host yourself, but the other three, just quick download, and you're ready to go with those. Highly recommend it. BookStack, we did some really cool stuff in here. Here's kind of what it looks like. You can organize different pages. These pages link together. It's got a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get, WYSIWYG. And you can host images. So we put everything from workflows and pipelines and design decisions and game pitches and other things like that. And what's really great about this, at any point during conversation, when somebody's like, hey, I don't remember, what did we decide for blah, blah, blah? You're like, I have a page for that. And you can point to the page. Even if that page isn't super fully robust, at least having some kind of stub on there where we can kind of, as a group, add notes and comments to it. Make sure we're all on the same page. Vikunja the neat thing with Vikunja, they just actually had their 1.0 release right when we started this jam. It's a little rough around the edges, but in general, it was pretty cool. You can organize things into lists or like a big old table or a calendar kind of view of when the tasks are due. We didn't assign due dates, so we couldn't really make use of that feature, but I kind of prefer this Kanban board style, which is very popular in a lot of task management. If you've ever used Trello before, this is exactly the same thing, except that Atlassian bought Trello, and they're the same company that owns the other one. So yeah, your choices are being more limited every day. Except Vikunja is free and open source to host yourself. Yes. Yeah. So this one's great. It's pretty cool because you can drag tasks, click and drag, and move them into different columns. It's pretty fun, and you can utilize this kind of at whatever tier you're comfortable with. One of the things that we got a lot of good out of is kind of tracking our state of our assets. So we would say, somebody's got to make the diamond. And so we would put concept art in there and then feedback on the current model, hey, add little chips to it and things like that. And we also had a little checklist on the task of what stage of the model was done. And there are much more robust solutions for asset management stuff, but as a minimal entry point, this works decent well for us.
Does it put, if you have multiple people putting comments, Do they put their name in it, or just keep track of who's commenting?
So every system in here, everybody has to have a user account, and because they're self-hosted, this is actually a benefit is that I lock out public access. You cannot visit my server and request to make an account. I have to make one for you, which makes it a lot more secure. But everybody's already logged in by the time they're looking there, and if you leave a comment, it knows who you are.
Oh, okay, so you can find out who made the comment if you have questions or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and because we delegated those tasks we had a dedicated art director. She was usually the go-to person to ask for those kinds of things anyway, which worked out well. So now here's the downside. We've gotten conditioned with software as a service of this idea that you get that free tier, and then once you're hooked, they start raising the price on you and all that kind of stuff. But the downside to the alternative, self-hosting, is that it's on your hardware, which means that you've got to buy the hardware. This can take many forms. When people hear the word server, they tend to think of like those giant racks at Google. It does not have to be that. A server is a job, not a particular piece of hardware, and you can get really cheap pieces of hardware to pull this off. I decided to go for this new green NAS. It's just this 4-bay NAS. It's got a pretty powerful CPU in it that is also power efficient. That's kind of important because it runs all day long. You don't want it causing a big power bill when heating up your room like crazy. And then I bought 4 server-grade hard drives. You don't want to cheap out on the hard drives because they are going to be spinning all day long, and that's where your data goes. If the hard drives die, you're kind of responsible for your own. So you do not have to buy anything this crazy expensive. I also bought 64 terabytes of storage here, which is way overkill for just getting started. Part of that is because they are in a redundant setup. So I have 32 terabytes of effective storage. 2 of them are backing up to the others immediately, and that's in the 4-bay here. So this is a version of what it might cost to get started on some of this, but this could take many forms. This could be going to Facebook Marketplace and buying somebody's old gaming rig that they don't want anymore. Or if you have an old gaming rig that you don't want anymore and you don't use it, you can pull it out of your closet, and that's a free server right there. You just got to install the right operating system. Speaking of which, off-the-shelf solutions like the Ugreen NAS there, they tend to come with their own operating system. I immediately said no to that because it's another thing in the pipeline that can go bad. That's another person that can rug pull me, raise their prices, or otherwise say, no, you're not good enough to run this operation. And this isn't hypothetical. One of the biggest manufacturers of network-attached storage devices, Synology, literally just did this by saying, no, you can't use any hard drive you want in it. You have to buy hard drives from us. And then they raised the price on the hard drives. I immediately didn't want to go that route. But luckily, there is a free and open source operating system designed to run network-attached storage devices. It's called TrueNAS, and their community edition is entirely free. And one of the really cool things about the community edition is that it comes with what they call the TrueNAS Apps Market, which is a terrible name because market implies dollars exchanging, but everything on there is free. And these are all open source Docker applications that are containerized. And every application you saw on there, Forgejo, Vikunja, BookStack, literally one click away from giving it a try and installing it on the server. And that's part of why I picked it and why I'm sharing it with you, is because I'm trying to make this as like digestible and easy to get started with as possible. So TrueNAS worked out really well for us. Then there's the biggest problem with this kind of setup. If you need other people off-site to be able to access your equipment, you need some way for them to network into your home address. And unfortunately, most people's routers don't have a static IP address. This is constantly rotating. And if you ask your internet service provider for a static IP address, like, you got to pay for business internet. And you could argue that if you're trying to run an indie studio off a setup like this, that maybe you should just buy the business internet. But there's numerous security risks of allowing anybody to enter your public network. If you just punch a hole in your firewall and come in, they come in. They do. It turns out that basically 24/7, there are constant bots online trying to hack your computer and your network constantly. And if you open up a little firewall hole for them, they will come right in, trying to encrypt all the data on your drives and everything like that. So that's usually not the most secure way of doing it. There's lots of solutions for this. People do things with Netbird, Cloudflare. There's a very popular one called Tailscale, which is effectively like a VPN kind of thing. I won't get into the details of that, but the problem with each of these is that almost all of them also have, you're limited to 5 users kinds of things. Luckily, this relatively new one had come out at the time called Pangolin. This one uses a bunch of under the hood open source, free and open source solutions, including WireGuard, Traffic, CrowdSec, and a handful of that handles a lot of security for you. And this actually runs on a different server offsite, and it receives all of your traffic, it filters out the bad guys, and then it only lets people with accounts into your services. So you can configure this multiple ways. I allow anybody to see the resources on my home equipment, but you need me to make you an account for you to be able to get in and effectively do anything. So this ended up being pretty secure, and the nice thing about it is that this service, again, is also entirely free. The only downside to that one is that it has to run off-site for it to be secure, because that one needs to be on a public network that is usually at some kind of server farm like Linode or Racknerd or others like that. So I went with Racknerd, and while that does sound like we're exiting the self-sufficient territory of hosting it yourself, this is $10 a year. So it's well within reason. If I can skip a coffee once and it basically pays for itself, and that is worth fixing the security nightmare of trying to punch a hole in my firewall. So it was pretty easy to set up. I'm not going to teach you how, because I am not a network professional, but I can, if you ask me after the talk, I can forward to resources that I use. There's lots of great stuff out there from like Orange Systems and other people that specialize from security and how to make sure that this stuff gets set up. And once it's going, it just kind of keeps on going. People can access your system at home. So after the initial buy-in, which varies a lot, I can't really answer what that question is going to be for you. If you got your own equipment at home, just sitting in your like old gaming PC sitting at home, it could be $0 to get started. Mine cost about $1,700 for the equipment that I showed you there, and this is relatively entry level. Especially, it's completely off the shelf. You just go to B&H, all those hard drives. You go to Ugreen's website, I want that NAS. And it was that easy to pick the parts, which is part of the appeal for that particular setup. And then to give you some perspective, one time I went, I saw a talk, I think it was at GDC, where somebody was talking about a somewhat similar setup of this self-sufficient, self-hosted server, and he was ecstatic that it only cost him $20,000. So we can do a little bit better. This one actually worked out very well for a group of 25 people. You're not going to be serving tens of thousands of people with this data because there's bandwidth limits and whatnot, but for us, our team of 25 people, it worked out very well. Honestly, probably that tier would have worked out pretty well. And then our ongoing costs. Remember, the software as a service stuff, the ongoing cost is $1,300 a month. Our ongoing costs, $5. After power consumption, approximately, of keeping the server running at my home, $10 a year for the offsite virtual private server to run Pangolin, which is giving us security access. I don't know about you, $5 a month is a little less than $1,300. Yeah, and especially because we ran the project for 2 months, this worked out great. And one of the cool things is that all of the fragile pieces in here, anybody that we're trusting with our business, if they go bad, like if Racknerd decides to raise their prices, I can just disassemble Pangolin on there, move to somebody who's got better prices, and redeploy Pangolin there. So I'm not bound to any one company that's potentially going to raise their prices on me, which felt really good. And everything that we made is available and open source. So you can play the game at itch.io, bugjam.itch.io/Tanuki's Big Heist. You can see the game homepage, which is bugjam.dev. This one just links to all the other resources that I was showing you there. The source code for in-game content is available at git.bugjam.dev/bugjam/pounds. If you just go to this one, you'll find links to all the others. There you can see the in-game source code. So the entire Godot project, all the sound effects, the textures, all the programming and everything in there. And you can download that and build the game yourself. And here's the art assets, which is actually a second repository that's full of all the high-resolution sculptures, all of the low-resolution models with their UVs and everything, and the blend files and everything like that is over here. All of our material creation process, and even our custom tools and pipelines that we made for the game to be able to export content is also available in this one. And all of that is free for you to explore. The team decided to give the game away. The in-game content was decided to give away as a MIT license. The art content was decided to be a share-alike license. And then I think all of our documentation, CC BY for all the content, so you just got to credit who made it. share alike for our documentation. If you want to learn all the workflows and everything like that, or you can just copy our entire set of documentation, you're free to do that. Just to it's under a share alike license. But yeah, all those resources are there and available for you to learn from, transform, do cool things with, and hopefully this primes you for whether it's a personal solo project on your own server, a cool little community project like we did, or maybe even a little indie studio. I'm tired of telling people, no, your project isn't good enough and you have to pay these thousands of dollars a month that you can't afford. I'm tired of saying no, so this is my way of turning around and saying yes. Thank you. You have time for questions? Oscar, do you have time? For questions?
Thank you. Yeah, we got 7 minutes.
Oh, sweet. Any questions?
You recording this? Yeah, where do we find the recording?
Get that bugjam.dev.
Can you give us a hamburger or an upload or?
Yeah, we can do that. We also, every meeting that the team had was recorded and uploaded and linked to in our documentation as well. So we could probably put this video on there as well.
I'll be giving mine.
Awesome. Yeah.
Do you do anything for building?
We stopped shy of a handful of those things, and that's one of the things that we would definitely like to do next. TrueNAS actually has a second application to deploy a Forgejo runner. So you could potentially run, every time somebody merges a commit, you could potentially run a build. We don't have that set up right now, but it would be fairly easy to extend that kind of functionality. And it's definitely something that we thought about. Validation for the project is something that we definitely want to improve because people checked things in that broke things as they were learning. And validator to prevent that from happening would have been great. Any other questions?
How do you get your new people on board with all of these free open software service? Like for especially new people who don't know what they're doing with this. How do you get them on board well?
So we decided again the project was meant to be 1 month. In that time, we were not intending to ram through and get a month worth of content done. We decided that every Thursday we would keep our Thursday trend and do a meeting there. So we had like a 2-hour meeting every Thursday, and I manually walked them through every one of these services in a recording, and then those recordings went up for anybody that missed it. But we had to play the bad guy a little bit and say, if you're going to sign up for this thing, you have to commit to going to every one of these meetings. You have to be there for all this stuff, and you have to actually like listen and follow the workflows. Otherwise, you're not going to be an effective participant of the jam. So everybody who signed up had to. It wasn't like signing your soul away, but everybody had to be like, yeah, okay, I'll actually like try.
Boundaries placed so that people follow the rules.
Yeah. And, we did have a few people drop out. We had 25 people signed up. By the end, I think probably 10 people dropped out, like after maybe doing like one asset. I still consider that like a thing.
That's pretty simple though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually one of the takeaways as well is like, that scope creep. Just because you got 25 participants, don't necessarily scope for 25 people's worth of work. But yeah, onboarding people is definitely a challenge, but recording everything and having those resources. We also then retroactively extracted documentation from the recordings to say, hey, here are the workflows that we outlined. So everything that was in the recording, whether people like it as a video format or they want to read it, that's all in the documentation.
That's all in the docs links, those recordings are still there.
Yeah, so that was the thing, because Rappner limits your data ingress and egress, and streaming video off of the server is definitely going to be pushing that to the limit. I uploaded everything to YouTube, put them as private links, and then put them as links in the docs.
That's smart.
And that way, anytime somebody streams it, they're streaming it from YouTube instead of me. Yeah.
Is your group going to do any future projects?
I'm sorry.
Is your group going to do any future projects?
We hope to. We learned a couple of lessons. Primarily, we want to refine our pipeline a little bit because people were accidentally misspelling things on their way out to the game. And in pipeline, when the game really cares that you spelled it right, so we're hoping to improve some of that. And when we're done there, we're hoping that we might kick off another one of these. It'll be fun. You interested in joining?
Yes.
Yeah. We're primarily focused around Seattle, so our time zone would be that. But due to the nature of being online, we should be able to let kind of anyone who's interested join. find some way to get in contact with me, see if you can join the Seattle Blender user group. I'll see if I can send you an invite as soon as we're done here.
Okay. I'm in North Idaho area, so I'm just like, yeah, like, you guys, would you be able to do any like long distance stuff? Like I saw that your meeting had that protocol.
As long as like the time zone difference isn't so crazy that you're like literally falling asleep during the meetings, then it should be good.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
So potentially anybody is welcome to join.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have no guarantees of when the next one might be, but absolutely, I'd be enthused by anybody that's interested in giving it a shot. Yeah, I'll see if I I'll see about setting up. We primarily do our communication through Discord, so come meet up with me. I'll get you sign up to the server. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, everybody.